Hello! I'm Elaine, and I'm a tour guide in the French Quarter. I do ghost tours. And I am not going to tell you the stories that I tell on my tour, because you gotta pay for those. But if you want to hear some interesting things that have happened to me while I'm leading random drunk people around the French Quarter, I got you. Sometimes, as a tour guide, you meet guests that no matter how hard you try, you're just not going to get along with them. Like, you try your best, they seem like nice people, and just like you clash. And I had a group one night that were like that. As soon as they came up, they started saying things that were just a little bit weird. Like, they were one of the groups that came up and it was like seeing children walk by and were like, oh my God, who would bring their kids to New Orleans? And as usual, I explained, like, well, it's a city. There are things to do with kids, and some of those kids might live here because it's a city. And they just kept being like, well, I would never bring my kids to New Orleans. And I'm like, that's your prerogative, but okay. And they were talking about how they were going to get super drunk this weekend. I'm like, yeah, then don't bring your kids if you're planning on getting super drunk. That's not the same kind of thing. But the real moment we clashed, we were walking towards, I think, the third stop. In fact, it was the third stop. And we see a mule carriage go by. And the girl immediately looks super upset. Like, she looks upset enough, I was afraid she was going to go talk to the carriage driver. And so, as I often do when people are upset about the mule carriages, I go to politely explain they're not horses, they're mules, and they are specifically mules because mules deal better with the heat and the chaos and actually can pull more weight. So it's just a lot healthier and kinder to have mules than horses. And also, those mules have really nice stables. The people who are the carriage riders, like, they treat them like family. They do what they can to make these mules' lives as nice as humanly possible. And I don't even get nearly that much information out. Like, as soon as I start talking about, like, no, they're treated pretty well, she's like, no, they're not. I'm like, yes, they are. I mean, maybe you have been a carriage rider in a different city, but trust me, New Orleans has a lot of laws. And before I can start talking about the, like, restrictions we have on weight and heat on these animals, she immediately is like, no, it's just slavery. And I'm like, okay, that's a lot. And then she starts talking about how it's just cruel that we ask these animals, and she kept calling them horses no matter how many times I told her they're mules, but these horses, it's so cruel that we force them to work for us, and that all animals in labor is slavery, and if we were really a good species, we would free all animals. And I'm like, sitting here like, I understand your point of view. I am not going to tell you that you are morally wrong. I cannot tell you that. But I can tell you what you're asking for is logistically impossible. Like, at this point, most domesticated animals, there is no way we could just release them into the wild without destroying numerous ecosystems. And we can't very well go back in time and, not create domesticated animals. So I will admit, it's one of those arguments I'm like, you're not thinking things through. And also, it is a sign of privilege if you believe that you can just get rid of all working animals across the world and it will not, horribly impact humans. All we can really do is treat these animals with respect and kindness. But she clearly did not want to hear that, and so I was basically just like, okay, I would appreciate you did not say it was slavery, because the next stop was the Lalaurie Mansion, where I have to talk about humans who were enslaved and tortured. So I'm a little bit like, no, this isn't gonna work. And sure enough, like, halfway through that stop, she just, like, gets an appalled look on her face and turns and walks away. And I will admit, I expected it. If you can't handle the thought of mules pulling carriages, you ain't gonna be able to handle stories of human beings beaten to death. But the fun thing about it is, immediately after they left, we were walking to the next stop, and we passed the same mule carriage, which is pulled over on the side of the road, and there's a guy in a BMW parked in the middle of the road, standing on the edge of his car, like, with one foot inside and one foot outside, screaming at the top of his lungs at the mule carriage rider, being like, we got money too! Which, of all the fights I've seen people have with mule carriage drivers, That's not one I've ever seen. My best guess here is that the guy was harassing the mule carriage rider, and the carriage rider explained, hey, everybody in this carriage paid money to be here, and these random people with Florida tags on decided that because they had money too, that allowed them to harass the mules? I don't know. The good news is the cops were probably called on them.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to share your own experiences in the comments below.